are back with something new. I am one of your hosts, Amber Solaris, and welcome to the first ever season of Reign of Pain, where we dive into the edges of desire, thrill of endurance, with the art of sadomasochism and pain-related play. So, this is your space to explore, educate, power. Whether you're a seasoned player or you're just beginning your journey into this form of play. So pain play isn't just about sensation, it's about that sense of trust and connection and really transformation. Every episode here will shed light on different techniques, different explorations, journey. Of course, we'll talk about the safety stuff and the inner worlds of people who embrace the sting, the thud, and the different sensations while they surrender to seeing stars. So step into the night and embrace the unknown and find your own version of the Reign of Pain. And of course, as always, a little bit of a content warning. This is listener discretion advised. There is a content warning for potentially distressing topics. We will be discussing a multitude of adult-only topics here, and so you are encouraged to consider your own capacity before continuing.
We have another treat for you today, listeners. We've already announced this particular presenter for Reign of Pain, and I'm sure you have been wondering when this particular episode would be coming down the line. But with me today is Typotyme. Would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit to listeners? I'm sure folks already have heard the name, but go ahead.
Well, you pronounced it, so you stole my little bit of secrecy from the public, but my name is Typotyme. I identify as a submissive, also a masochist with some slave tendencies. I'm really excited to be discussing shame and masochism with you guys. I think it's a topic that is really near and dear to my heart, and I'm excited to be here and to speak about it.
And we are super excited to have you doing this topic and doing it such justice. I am also a fellow Brene Brown enthusiast. Love their work, love the research that they've done with things. And their research on shame, empathy, and shame resilience with things. So it looks like, based from what I've seen thus far, that this is going to be a fantastic addition to the rest of the event.
Thank you.
Keep on a lookout, attendees. So fingers crossed. Any particular hints that you want to share with us, or like sneak peeks of exactly what you're going to hope to kind of accomplish with your discussion for the event?
Yeah, I think you touched on it. I think resiliency is something that is often ignored. A lot of people talk about shame in of itself, the causes of shame and the particular topics, such as like, why am I not good enough? Why I feel XYZ, all of those things. And a lot of people touch on that, but not what to do after. So I've kind of put together some different scenarios that I've faced in my journey in masochism and how I've kind of combated those feelings and grown them and faced and moved towards the shame and grown my resiliency in both myself and my support systems.
I love it. I'm so excited for this one. So, in talking about shame with masochism, I think for some folks who have been in S&M for a while, they may be nodding their heads along and going, yes, we can so totally see that, and such a needed topic. Other folks may be a little bit perplexed. and going, wait, what? You guys are so out there with what you do. What do you mean shame? Like, are we talking about like shame with what you experienced? Are we talking about like drop shame? What is this experience like? Why would someone feel shame with what they're doing and still do it?
Yeah, I've tried to cover and encapsulate a few different scenarios, like you said. One of them is, for example, times that I felt shame during a particular type of play. And so I tried to tackle that, but also shame that might happen after and during drop. So after you actually did the thing, but also like the shame that you might face when you bring up a particular kink with a partner that you haven't done before, and the strength that it takes to be vulnerable and share that. And maybe it's not met with the most comfortable of feelings to continue to pursue. So I tried to look at it from a bunch of different angles that somebody might feel shame, because I think like what you said, a lot of people have these feelings, but they can't pinpoint it to a certain scenario that they might be experiencing.
I think also people, when they think about shame, their expectations for what they think shame experiences are like is often way off base. They often, I think, people expect such a intense experience with shame when it can be so subtle, especially since so many of us, I think, developmentally. Sorry, I'm going to go psychologist here for a second. Um, most of us experience developmentally shame uh, during early adolescence. That is the period during which shame really starts to take place when we become more aware socially and things. So it's often very intense feelings of shame. Elkine has a whole lot of theories related to that, but we'll talk about it. I'm not gonna go that far into it. Sorry, I'm keeping nerd on track. Uh, brain present here, not nerding too badly. I think we all expect that when we feel shame, it's going to always look like that adolescent shame, and we never move past it into what adult shame can often look like, and that it doesn't always look like that adolescent shame. And it can be quite intense, and um, can often move back into that intense experience, but it can look different and sidetrack into other more defensive experiences to avoid those kind of feelings. So I think a lot of us experience more shame than we want to talk about or acknowledge feeling, because we learn at some point meta emotions surrounding shame, or how we feel about feelings, um, how we feel about shame, that it's uncomfortable, or that it's not an okay emotion to experience, or that it's something we want to avoid. And so we jump into secondary emotions to try to cover up or avoid it, instead of experiencing it and staying in it and accepting that that's what we're experiencing and working through it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think even with my journey in kink, the first few years or so, as I was exploring different things, like I would go through these really intense drop cycles. And until I started, probably about 2, 3 years ago, started really digging into my drops, was I able to even identify that the feelings there were rooted in shame. But had I have not intentionally taken a look at those feelings, I never would have put two and two together, and started to kind of take action from that front.
Absolutely. And I think even then, with the emotional side of things and the physiological, neurological side of things that I talk a lot about with stuff. For me, another aspect, a curious aspect about shame for me, is it's also an emotional side effect of my syncopal disorder. So,
Mm.
uh, yeah. um, so, is it drop? So you'll hear me talk about in some of my things. Is it drop or is it drop? Like,
Mhm.
is it drop or is it syncope? Because a lot of people faint more in kink than you'll want to talk about, and it can actually be in part that shame aspect can be an emotional side effect of physiological aspects to things. So it's a really fascinating topic. Sorry, this is what you get when you get a
Yeah.
if you can't tell, emotions are my primary area of research.
No,
Uh,
the one thing, not to go on another tangent, but when I was researching and putting together this topic, I think we touched a lot on the feelings part of it, but there is a huge like physiological part and biological part that happens to your body when you're feeling these things. And one of the big ones, when you have had a trauma response or feelings of trauma rooted in your shame, a big physiological response is intense chest flushing. So
mhm.
you can notice I'm wearing a turtleneck sweater, and that's because my chest probably looks like I have hives right now. But I thought that that was super interesting because I never would have thought to connect like the scenarios when I flush up like that is because I'm feeling shame
Mhm.
and embarrassed. So
It's so interesting the
yeah.
way that our bodies respond, and the way I mean, just Schacter Singer two-factor arousal theory, the way that our bodies move from sorry, I'm brain back, not thinking nerd shit. Coming back to Typotyme. Um, sorry, really should have probably asked Miss K to do this interview so that it wouldn't be nerd heavy. Um, oh well, you know. Uh,
I could keep going, but back on track.
typo time, typo time. We're talking about typo time.
Can you
Typo
tell I'm trying to distract from myself?
time. I'm not hard to distract if you haven't noticed. Squirrel, squirrel brain, but that's all right. And so, it's talking about your experiences with kink, and a lot of folks have probably followed a lot of your journey online with things. What kind of brought you into the kink community and helped you start exploring kink, despite maybe some of the barriers that you faced emotionally, socially, etc.?
Yeah, I got into things pretty early, to be honest. I kind of got into it in a non-traditional sense. So when I was a teenager, I was really into piercings. And so in the state of New York at the time, you only had to be 16 to get body piercings without parental consent. So in a pretty short span of time, I got a lot of body piercings. And when I was going there, the piercer was like, did you have a plan for all of these? Like, why are you getting these? And I was able to kind of identify that I liked the adrenaline rush of it. So that was kind of the first pinpoint to myself where I can look back and be like, I was taking action towards my masochism. So I
Mhm.
ended up becoming friends with the group of people that were in that piercing studio, and they did a lot of stereotypical like freak show type events at the New York
Mhm.
State Fair at the time. So they coordinated like hook suspensions, play piercings, like sword swallowing and stuff like that. So I started getting into things through them, and then that kind of overlapped with the kink and BDSM community. And so as I got older, like I was just kind of enveloped into it and was able to kind of start slowly exploring things. I did have a stint in the military. So while I was in the military, I wasn't actively pursuing anything. But once I got out, I kind of like really dove headfirst into exploring things.
I love it. That's fantastic. So how have you kinda would you describe your relationship to your masochism, for instance? Since that is such a big aspect of your identity that we're talking about here.
Yeah, early on, like I said, with the piercings, I was able to be like, I could solidly pinpoint that I liked pain. But once I started exploring the different elements within BDSM, it did kind of get lost for quite a bit. I would say probably the last 5 years, I intentionally started to take a look at my masochism and wanting to explore more pain-based play. I think for me, relinquishing the control and allowing somebody to cause me pain kind of breaks down those mental barriers that I have. So a lot of the times the words that I associate with my masochism are as I like to feel raw and vulnerable. So as I've been building like more and more intimate connections with people, it's just kind of naturally led me to more intense sadomasochistic play.
Hmm. So it very much is associated with intense connection and a level of feeling seen for you,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
which I think lends itself very well to one, the after effects of one feeling a sense of shame or a fear, perhaps, of feeling judged. Um, that intimate, raw, vulnerable connection there afterwards, especially for individuals who are neurodivergent and may have lower intimacy tolerance levels. Because I, for instance, have lower intimacy threshold tolerances. Like, I really love deeply intimate connections, but I can only take it for so much before it's like, oh my God, this is like cloying and I can't take it anymore. Um, uh, and it also at the same time is really beautiful in that it's also kind of the antidote to a sense of shame there. So that's a really beautiful dynamic to play with in and of itself. I really love that.
Yeah, it's been difficult because I kind of think you touched on it. Not everybody is looking to be a guide or help coordinate that type of emotional intensity. So being able to find and negotiate properly with the people that I'm involved with now has really created like a really symbiotic type relationship, like you said, to help me grow and face those feelings.
Certainly. No, I 100% get it because that's exactly the types of dynamics that I work with at the same
Yeah.
time. Because it has to have that very raw, intense emotionality. Um, it's interesting because I recently attended a class on sadism, and people were talking about how to disconnect with sadism so that they could be sadists. And I'm sitting here and I'm going, the hell is everyone talking about? What? Who's disconnecting as a sadist? This makes no sense to me because it's like utterly foreign. Because to me, my sadism is literally, and my masochism is literally the opposite. It requires intense attunement uh,
Mhm.
because we're going on this fucking roller coaster together, baby.
Yeah,
Um,
I think even like the nuance with like the I wouldn't necessarily call them pickup play scenes, but scenes that I've had with people one off for like a weekend or something. Um, Even if the scene itself isn't as of a depth emotionally, like the friendship outside of the scene is usually like pretty strong. So even if
yeah,
they're not able to connect with me emotionally in the scene outside of it, like it's still there. So
yeah. It's mind-boggling for me. I'm sure it works very well for other people. It
yeah,
just is
yeah.
like, you do you, boo. I just can't understand it. but that's okay. I also can't understand a lot of things, so I'm okay with that. Um, limitations to inward understanding, but there are lots of those. Uh,
Mhm.
so, where are you kind of extending your horizons from here? What are kind of some of your, I hesitate to say goals, but where is the next kind of path for typo time? What are the next doors looking like?
Um, I would suppose like play wise and like with my kink identity this past year, I've really leaned into the feeling of suffering
Hmm.
and going beyond times where I am feeling pleasure. I've really found a lot of enjoyment and intense fear play and suffering in itself. So that's been incredibly enjoyable and rewarding to have scenes like that. And overall, just continuing to do opportunities like this. Like, I have a huge desire to always learn. Like, I'm always doing online classes or reading, whether it's kink or otherwise. Like, I'm never just sitting at home twiddling my thumbs. Like, I love to just absorb content overall. So I think this particular opportunity hopefully spurns a lot of other ones down the line. So.
I will be right there. So, you know, not that we will be maybe somewhat selfishly encouraging you to hint put together more classes for us to hint host for you in the future, because hint we might want to attend them. Um, you know, we've made no secret here with the ROB and Let It Rain team. We put together the events that we want to attend. Um, just saying. We might want to encourage the presenters that we want to attend. Uh, so it is what it is. So no, I think that will be fantastic. I really love what you were talking about with the concept of suffering. You mind talking a little bit more about what that means for you, and how that is a little bit different than just generalized masochism in a sense?
Um, I know like there's a lot of discussion recently on FET regarding like CNC related dynamics. And for me, I feel like a lot of my masochism, as the scene progresses, it's slowly becoming um, less and less of something that I can control. So like by the time the scene is finishing, like I like to be at a spot where my topper partner can read me and where my mind is at to get me to a place where I have that moment of catharsis. And
Mhm.
so recently, with really trusted partners, I like to go a little bit beyond that to
Mhm.
kind of like stretch. I wouldn't say to push my limits because they know my limits and what
Mhm.
I'm comfortable with doing and what my body can take, but to kind of explore that gray area of my mentality of once I get past that point of, okay, I'm no longer in control, I'm truly not liking this. Now I'm doing it as an act of submission and an act of suffering for my partner, and being able to grow that intimate area has been really quite fun. So,
Love it. That's beautiful. And there is something to be said for just sitting in something that you don't like and accepting it consensually, of course, with
yeah.
forethought for listeners' perspective. Of course, this is not acceptable to like everyone. This is not within everybody's risk profile. You know, all the disclaimers that usually come up with the fucked up shit that people like me are doing. Um, don't try this at home, kids. Uh,
Also throwing out there, like, not everything or not every scene that I do is the intent to play in that area either.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get a certain image of what suffering looks like, and it could be as simple as yeah, a whole nother tangent.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you so much for all of your time today, Typotyme, and we look forward to seeing your growth as a presenter and hearing your voice more in kink spaces.
Thank you so much for having me and for hosting and putting this all together. I have a lot of gratitude for everyone that organizes things like this.
We're looking forward to it, and we will see you all for Reign of Pain. Be sure to check out Typotyme's fantastic class. Thank you so much, everyone, and we will see you on the next episode.